How can DeepSeek be an opportunity to achieve comprehensive superiority in information technology? If you read this article carefully, more than 90% of average readers will find it understandable. Your understanding of artificial intelligence and the entire field of information technology will reach the level of doctoral advisors and even academicians worldwide. The DeepSeek shockwave marks a fundamental revolution in the architecture of global information technology, which has two main characteristics. The hardware system transitions from being computation-dependent to storage-dependent. The overall architecture shifts from being hardware-dependent to being programming-dependent. 1. The DeepSeek shockwave. A month ago, the entire US military circles were intensely discussing China's sixth-generation fighter. Half a month ago, the media circles were discussing the major accounting between China and the US on Zaya Hongshu. Now, the global technology circles are again intensely discussing DeepSeek. By the way, the release date of DeepSeek v3 is also December 26, 2024, which is the anniversary of the instructor's birthday. Shortly after the release of DeepSeek v3, there were two significant moves. On January 20, 2025, DeepSeek R1 was released, which is the version that truly ignited the world, achieving performance levels similar to OpenAI's O1 version, but with training costs of less than $5.6 million, only 3% to 5% of O1's. It's important to note that this doesn't mean that the technical performance of DeepSeek R1 far exceeds that of OpenAI O1. Rather, under conditions of roughly the same or slightly better performance, its training costs and training time have shown a magnitude of decrease, and the results of these two factors are both disruptive. The main reason for the extremely low training costs is the significant reduction in the demand for computational power, which will significantly impact the demand for NVIDIA's AI computing cards. The training time has decreased from 6 months to only 6 days, which will dramatically change the speed of AI software iterations. A 6-month training period is roughly the duration of a seed field experiment in agriculture. It takes about the same time for a rice seed to germinate, transplant, head, and harvest. The entire growth cycle of early maturing rice is even just 3 months. Any software needs to be continuously iterated and evolved. If your software takes 6 months to run completely once, while mine only takes 6 days, then after you upgrade your software and need to run a test, you'll need to wait at least 6 months while I only need 6 days. Even if my software is initially much worse than yours, in just a few rounds, I will have iterated 10 times while you haven't completed even one iteration. How can you compete? Even if you have exceptional programming skills, you won't be able to compete with me. Moreover, DeepSeek is completely open source, which means that all companies' large model software worldwide will have to follow this technological route, especially the technological philosophy. Otherwise, it will be a competition between agricultural civilization and industrial civilization. DeepSeek quickly climbed to the top of the download charts on the Apple App Store in the US. On January 27, 2025, DeepSeek created a stir on the US NASDAQ, particularly impacting NVIDIA, whose stock price fell by 16.97%, after a 3.12% drop the previous trading day. On January 28, New Year's Eve, after a sharp decline in US stocks, DeepSeek released the open-source multimodal model Janus Pro, in which the 7 billion parameter Janus Pro 7B model outperformed OpenAI's DALL-E 3 and Stability AI Stable Diffusion in the image generation ranking using text prompts. NVIDIA lost over $700 billion in just 2 days, approximately 1/5 of its market value, with a single-day drop of about $590 billion on the 27th, setting a record for the largest single-day drop in US history. This also caused the Nasdaq index to gap down by 3.07% that day. Of course, such short-term fluctuations may not have lasting significance. On January 28th, NVIDIA rebounded by 8.93%, but then fell again by 4.1% on the 29th. However, it is historically unprecedented for a small Chinese company, established just over a year ago with only 140 employees, to release a product that significantly impacts the entire US NASDAQ tech sector. The panic within the US tech community has led to unprecedented malicious attacks on DeepSeek servers from specific IP addresses in the US. These attacks have continued to escalate and are ongoing. Notably, Trump's personal account includes #AmericaFirst, #ChinaIs, Killing America, #AI, #MAGA. Liang Wenfeng, the founder of DeepSeek, spoke at a symposium convened by the Prime Minister. The emergence of such a shocking technological advancement in China has also stirred the entire Chinese society. Many netizens have commented, hoping I would discuss this issue, and several media outlets have requested articles from me on related topics. In such a specialized field, it can be challenging for general media personnel and even some professionals to grasp the key points. One puzzling question is, why has DeepSeek been able to make such dazzling improvements in a field of AI that seems to be so advanced in the US? In other words, why is there such significant room for improvement in a field where the US seems to be leading? If there were no room for improvement, even immense capabilities would be of little use. In fact, this enormous potential for improvement is not at all strange. It is a very common situation across the entire information technology field. DeepSeek has simply pierced through this barrier at a societal level. To understand why DeepSeek can achieve this, professionals can refer to the following paper on DeepSeek R1 or check out the open source code. However, for most ordinary netizens, getting caught up in these AI technical details can be overwhelming. Even with efforts to simplify the science, understanding may still be challenging. Moreover, even if professionals read DeepSeek's papers or analyze its algorithms, they may not fully grasp why such significant improvements were possible. Therefore, this article will use language and popular science knowledge that more than 90% of netizens can understand to help people grasp why there is such a vast potential for improvement in the American approach to information technology, and how Liang Wenfeng's team at Huanfeng Quantitative achieved this success. In fact, the existence of this potential for improvement is a potential I have systematically researched throughout my life, continuously striving for enhancement and achieving considerable results. Thus, this article aims not only to make it clear to ordinary netizens, but also hopes to serve as a call to action against American dominance in the field of information technology, urging all professional netizens, relevant government personnel, and investors to grasp and launch a systematic Chinese-style information technology revolution from the perspective of optimizing efficiency, fundamentally overturning the American information architecture and system. This article will outline several technical details that can lead to significant improvements, but there are indeed too many areas for improvement in the entire field of information technology. The article will conclude with preliminary overall suggestions. 2 approaches to understanding the world. To understand this article, we will not dive into technical details like most people do, but rather step back and briefly compare the 2 basic paths of scientific understanding of the world at the highest possible level. One is the empirical method, and the other is the theoretical method. These 2 methods are quite familiar to everyone. What is the empirical method? In information technology terms, it refers to a method relying on historical knowledge storage. When encountering a new problem, the empirical method may not require a deep understanding of the problem, but rather provides an instant answer by directly comparing the problem with stored historical knowledge, identifying the one with the least difference, and making a simple adjustment to the differing aspects to yield a result. Therefore, this method also has relatively minimal reliance on computing power. Essentially, it is primarily an algorithm based on querying and utilizing experiential knowledge. The other method is the theoretical method, which, when developed to its extreme, becomes scientific theory. Newtonian mechanics can describe all laws of motion in the world using 4 very simple mathematical formulas. Maxwell's equations can similarly describe all laws of electromagnetism with just a few extremely simple mathematical formulas. The theoretical method can minimize the amount of stored knowledge, which reflects its economic efficiency. However, when using this theoretical method to solve practical problems, a significant amount of computation is required to apply these mathematical formulas to yield results. Thus, this method is reliant on computing power. Both of these methods have their advantages and disadvantages, and it cannot be said that one is absolutely better than the other. The empirical method has the least reliance on computing power and is extremely fast, but it may not be comprehensive, accurate, or in-depth, and it may struggle to clarify causal relationships. In computer programming, its general applicability may not be the best, as it often needs to be customized for specific problems. The theory-based method requires the least amount of knowledge storage, is complete, has clear causal relationships, is precise, and is relatively simple and versatile in programming. However, when solving practical problems, It requires precise acquisition of all boundary conditions, which requires significant computation. In real life, it is not always possible to clearly distinguish whether a theory-based method or an experience-based method is being used. Many situations involve a blend of both methods. For example, many empirical formulas may appear to be theories and may indeed contain some causal relationship components, but in fact, they are incomplete statistical results that lie between theory and experience, indicating that the causal relationships are not completely understood. Current artificial intelligence largely represents a form that exists between theory and experience. To illustrate how these two methods manifest in information technology, I will provide specific examples. My graduate advisor at Beijing University of Posts and Telecommunications, Kai Shueshuan, made a significant contribution by being one of the first to convert meteorological satellite data, which was traditionally processed only on mainframe computers, into a format that could be handled on personal computers. One of the team's research achievements was the first discovery of the famous 1987 Daxing Anling fire from satellite cloud images, humorously referred to in a Spring Festival gala skit as the forest fire ignited by Fei Xiong's A Fire in Winter. The biggest challenge was reducing the computational power requirements. This was particularly crucial for processing satellite cloud image data on low-power personal computers. One of the largest computational loads was the data projection conversion when projecting the original satellite cloud image data onto a flat map. The principle is straightforward and can be grasped with basic middle school geometry. I won't discuss it here, but it is important to note that this projection conversion requires trigonometric calculations for each pixel. The formulas for trigonometric functions are very simple to write, but calculating them on a computer can be quite troublesome. This is because modern electronic computer CPUs can only perform binary addition operations. Therefore, all mathematical calculations are essentially transformed into a series of addition operations through certain algorithms. The general method is to first expand any mathematical function into a power series that only contains addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, and then convert the multiplication, division, and subtraction into addition operations. The above is an example of the power series expansion of the sine function that even a middle school student can understand. The computational load of this expansion is theoretically infinite. However, depending on the precision requirements, one can choose a finite maximum value for n, allowing for a limited amount of computation that ensures a certain level of precision. Different maximum values for n will naturally result in different computational loads. However, with such a transformation, what seems like a very simple mathematical function can actually expand into thousands of basic binary addition operations in a computer. Fortunately, thanks to Moore's law, computers have continuously doubled their processing power, making it easier to handle larger computational loads. This is the approach of relying on computational power. Since each pixel must undergo such processing, if we were to directly adopt this theoretical computation-dependent method, it would have been impossible to perform even the simplest satellite image data planar projection processing on personal computers in the 1980s. Therefore, the solution is to first compute a relatively complete table of trigonometric functions for practical applications and store it. Below is a commonly used table of trigonometric functions. When calculating the trigonometric function for a certain angle, one can simply refer to this table. This drastically reduces the computational load of the previously mentioned computation-dependent method by thousands of times. If the angle to be calculated cannot be directly found in the table and lies between two angles, simple interpolation using the trigonometric values of the two adjacent angles in the table can yield the result. This method exemplifies the reliance on stored historical knowledge. We have heard that the scientists behind China's 2 bombs and 1 satellite calculated the model for the atomic bomb using an abacus, which many find incredible. In fact, they certainly did not use the same algorithms as computers. Instead, they sought methods that minimized their reliance on computational power. This approach relied primarily on various pre-calculated function tables, such as logarithm, square root, and trigonometric tables, utilizing table lookups and interpolation during calculations to minimize computational load. It took Zhu Chongzhi decades to calculate pi using counting rods, long before the abacus existed, and had he used an abacus for various function calculations, deriving the atomic bomb model in a limited time would have been impossible. Understanding These concepts makes it much easier to grasp why DeepSeek's most fundamental algorithm is so efficient. The pure reinforcement learning algorithm that is based on pre-training. Although pure reinforcement learning algorithms can begin from any foundation, having a pre-training basis is still very important. Simply put, content that has already been trained should not be retrained. Just as previously calculated trigonometric functions should not be recalculated for each pixel processed. This is one of the secrets to significantly saving computational power. The reinforcement learning algorithm primarily builds on previous training results, continuously adjusting the new processing results against the target problem, known as the environment in reinforcement learning terminology, and the deviations between them referred to as rewards. The reason I try to avoid using technical jargon and instead use natural language that the average person can understand is not only because it makes comprehension easier, but also, more importantly, because many technical terms may not be entirely appropriate and can easily lead to misunderstandings, as will be discussed later. So, to put it simply, the training cost for the latest version of DeepSeek is reported to be only $5.6 million. The $1.7 billion that DeepSeek has previously invested is indeed reflected in the latest version. However, this means that completely new training can indeed be achieved at a significantly lower additional cost. Therefore, it is reasonable to say that its latest training cost is only $5.6 million. Do many other large models repeat the training process every time a new version is released? Objectively speaking, the approach of leveraging existing training results, based on experience-based knowledge, is also seen in other large models, but overall, they do indeed face the issue of extensive repeated training. This definitely increases computing power consumption significantly. So, even though information technology evolves quickly, understanding the fundamental scientific methods reveals that there is hardly any truly new technology. All so-called innovative technologies are merely the representation of existing technological principles under new technological conditions. Do not be fooled by those so-called cutting-edge technologies. This is true for China, and it is equally true for the United States. 3. The most general methods for improving information processing efficiency. 1. Eliminate redundancy, whether it is a theoretical or experiential method. The key principle for enhancing information processing efficiency is to minimize redundancy. If information is already stored, there's no need to store identical data again. This is known as data compression. All text, image, and video compression technologies, as well as storage compression technologies, aim to reduce redundant information in various ways, thereby saving storage space. If a model has already been computed once, there is no need to repeat the computation. This refers to reducing the computational workload in algorithms. 2. Appropriately reduce precision. The higher the precision requirement, the greater the demand for computing power, generally speaking. Especially for details that are not closely related, simply removing them can save a significant amount of computing power and storage. For example, in image processing, since human sensitivity to color details is far lower than to brightness, it is common to retain only one color value from 4 adjacent pixels. Originally, each pixel has 1 brightness and 2 color values, totaling 3 pieces of information. For 4 pixels, that amounts to 3 times 4 is equal to 12 pieces of information, allowing for the removal of 6 2 color values from 3 pixels, thereby directly reducing the image data volume by half. This image format is known as 4:2:0, compared to the original format 4:4:4. In lossy image compression, some less important detail information is also discarded, greatly reducing the amount of information required for storage. In artificial intelligence, there is also a method of appropriately lowering precision called quantization. I personally think the name of this term is quite poor, especially since it may be difficult for the general public to understand. Therefore, if you are an ordinary person and do not understand some technical terms, do not feel inferior. It might not be a lack of understanding on your part. Rather, the term itself is poorly defined, which is quite common. The term quantization is used in too many contexts, most of which are not very appropriate. For example, the industry that DeepSeek originally engaged in was called quantitative trading. The quantitative in quantitative trading is also not a very good name. The best term is one that ordinary people can immediately understand accurately and aligns closely with the literal meaning of the term itself. The term quantization refers to converting non-quantitative data into a quantitative form. For instance, in analog to digital, A/D conversion circuits, transforming the original analog quantity into a digital quantity is called quantization. This reflects the original meaning of quantization, while its use in other fields is often borrowed. I studied circuit design in college, so such terminology may fool others, but it won't fool me. The so-called quantization in artificial intelligence simply lowers the precision of the data, for example, reducing 4-byte floating point data to 2-byte floating point data, which directly halves the storage requirement. The original data is already quantified. It is just that the precision has been reduced. How can this be called quantization? It is more like roughening or lowering precision. However, if it were named according to its true meaning, it might make the technology seem less sophisticated. Thus, the term quantization is used as it sounds sophisticated but is somewhat vague. The term quant in quantitative trading is also not entirely appropriate. This is because traditional investment trading also relies heavily on mathematical models and data. The key to quantitative trading is to automate stock selection and trading decisions by establishing corresponding trading strategies and delegating them to computer programs. Therefore, referring to it as computerized automated trading might be easier to understand. Of course, it is also possible that the original creators of this trading method did not want ordinary people to grasp it, which may explain why they chose such a complex and unclear term. Since the original creators named it, subsequent users had to continue using this term to sound more professional. So, don't assume that just because you can speak in technical jargon, you can impress others. Corresponding to quantitative trading is high-frequency trading. According to Article 21 of the Regulations on the Management of Program Trading in the Securities Market, Trial, issued by the China Securities Regulatory Commission on May 11, 2024, high-frequency trading refers to program trading characterized by 1. A high number and frequency of orders and cancellations within a short period. 2. A high number of orders and cancellations within the same day. 3. Other characteristics recognized by the Securities Exchange. In fact, these definitions do not capture the essence, and the term high frequency, used in this context, is not entirely appropriate. The key feature of this trading is its reliance on communication technology that has lower latency than typical exchanges, which enables traders to anticipate stock price changes quickly, allowing them to place buy and sell orders in advance, thus ensuring profits, even if the profit from each transaction is not necessarily large. Therefore, the essence of this trading is anticipatory trading, rather than necessarily having a very high frequency. Of course, due to the short time frame, the price differences in stocks may not be very significant, so to achieve greater profits, it generally involves more transactions. Multiple transactions may be high frequency, but not necessarily so. It could just mean multiple transactions over a relatively long period, without necessarily being high in frequency. However, without a low-latency fiber optic communication system, participating in algorithmic high-frequency trading can lead to disastrous outcomes, especially if traders cannot access stock prices and order information in advance. Returning to the theme of this section regarding methods to reduce hardware requirements by lowering precision, it is important to note that simply lowering precision may also lead to final results that do not meet requirements. Therefore, there are techniques involved here. 3. Appropriately simplify and reduce problem complexity. If the number of parameters to be calculated increases, the computational load will inevitably increase. Simplifying the model by reducing parameters and complexity will generally lead to a decrease in computational load. For instance, training a model with 10 billion parameters will result in a computational load that is 1 to 2 orders of magnitude lower compared to a model with 100 billion parameters, assuming all other factors are the same. However, reducing complexity or parameters may also lead to a decrease in performance. If parameters can be well selected and coefficients properly adjusted, it is possible to achieve minimal differences in performance. This approach is known as distillation in artificial intelligence. I believe this term is poorly chosen and quite misleading, as it clearly borrows from the concept of distillation in chemistry. But what is the distillation method in chemistry? For example, the distilled water we drink is produced by heating water containing a very small amount of impurities into steam, which then condenses back into water in another container. From this, we can see that the characteristic of the distillation method is to remove a very small amount of impurities from the water, so the volume and weight of the distilled water change very little compared to the original. 1 kilogram of impure water will still be very close to 1 kilogram of pure water after distillation. However, the process that the distillation method in artificial intelligence is intended to convey is evidently quite different from that in chemistry. In fact, it is more akin to purification. After purification, the volume and weight generally decrease significantly. The purified substance may still contain a very small amount of impurities. The portion discarded during purification may still contain some effective substances that were not removed. Alternatively, it could be referred to as trimming or other more accurate and easily understood terms. However, using these more common, accurate, and easily understood terms would diminish the perception of cutting-edge technology. Therefore, calling it distillation, a somewhat obscure term, makes it appear more impressive. Similar situations exist in many technical and scientific fields. I have previously written articles discussing numerous cases of poorly chosen academic names in the field of molecular biology. Once these are clarified, readers will find it much easier to understand them. Thus, this article emphasizes the importance of initially viewing problems from a higher perspective, because only by flattening those professional terms can you truly understand their precise meanings easily. OpenAI is now accusing DeepSeek of distilling its corresponding software version. Whether this is true or not, we won't weigh in, but even if that process does exist, what of it? This is a common and accepted method in AI. Moreover, DeepSeek may not be solely optimizing based on OpenAI. There could be additional self-optimization processes at play. It may not have simply simplified from the parameters of the OpenAI model. You can accuse DeepSeek of plagiarism, but I can tell you that few technologies in this world are truly original. Almost all technologies in the US are just different implementations and integrations of the same underlying principles under new conditions, which leads people to think they are entirely new cutting-edge technologies. Modern computing technology is essentially a copy of the Chinese abacus with adaptations to new technological contexts. All information storage technology is a development of the Chinese papermaking technique under new technological conditions, and all modern digital coding technology is a plagiarism of the I Ching's hexagrams with developments under new technological contexts. Some have accused Harmony OS of containing Android code, but do you really think Android was originally created by Google? It wasn't. Furthermore, Andy Rubin, the founder of Android, had previously worked at Apple and Microsoft. Google didn't originally create Android. It acquired the company founded by Andy Rubin and others in 2003. Microsoft's original DOS system was a copy of Gary Kildall's CP/M operating system, and it wasn't even Microsoft that copied it. They directly bought a product from another company that had copied it, even retaining Kildall's original syntax error 1 files copied verbatim, which remained unchanged until Microsoft's DOS was completely replaced by the Windows system. As long as it doesn't violate any patents, plagiarism is just another way of saying learning. So those who accuse DeepSeek of plagiarism should just be quiet. This just shows you're not really part of this field. Aside from the Chinese abacus, papermaking, and the I Ching, which are truly original technologies from 0 to 1, the development of information technology since then has largely been about borrowing ideas. To grasp why DeepSeek is so efficient, just saying it uses distillation technology isn't enough. It has many unique technologies. These unique technologies all aim to minimize costs in AI. For example, it doesn't rely on manual labeling of training data. Mixture of experts, MO. Multi-head latent attention, MLA. 2. What is tagging? To understand why DeepSeek does not rely on human tagging, one must first grasp what tagging entails. Why can artificial intelligence software comprehend human texts and images? If one does not understand data tagging, it may seem mysterious at first, but it becomes clear once understood. If data from the internet were fed directly into AI software, it would be very difficult for the software to understand it accurately. Therefore, the raw data is not directly input into the software. Instead, it is first judged and tagged by humans. For example, the words America and May 2. The former should be understood as the country America, while the latter should be interpreted as an abbreviation for beautiful. Such understanding is initially established by engineers who set rules which are then executed by specialized taggers. So, don't be fooled into thinking that large AI models are truly miraculous. They are essentially just a computerization of human intelligence. However, manual tagging is costly, inefficient, and labor-intensive. The American company Scale AI specializes in providing tagging services for other large model companies. Thus, the company's founder, Alexander Wang, quickly criticized DeepSeek publicly. The reason is simple. If DeepSeek operates this way, it would put immense pressure on Scale AI, potentially putting them out of business. So why can DeepSeek avoid relying on human tagging? The initial models still require human tagging, but as mentioned earlier, the method to enhance efficiency is to eliminate redundancy. If something has already been tagged, there is no need to tag it again. Additionally, by employing reinforcement learning, it is not necessary to manually judge and tag the data beforehand. Rather, adjustments can be made to previously trained data through human judgment after the model runs, achieving a similar effect to human tagging. If the overall reinforcement learning is based on previously tagged foundational data, there is essentially no need for further human tagging. With the foundational knowledge we've discussed, this mystery becomes clear. 3. Mixture of experts. In this article, I will try not to delve into technical details, especially regarding how DeepSeek specifically implements its technology, because for the vast majority of people, it is unnecessary to understand those details. For other technical professionals, if you grasp the basic principles, you can implement it using different technical routes and even achieve better technical implementations. For DeepSeek, they are constantly modifying their code for various improvements, so others will never catch up by overly pursuing the implementation details. From the very beginning of my understanding of general artificial intelligence technology, I have always been a proponent of the mixture of experts model. Long before OpenAI was founded, I, as an investor, came into contact with some of the top general artificial intelligence startups in Silicon Valley. At that time, I had serious doubts about the idea of general artificial intelligence, as various specialized artificial intelligence technologies were already available. I questioned why we couldn't achieve general artificial intelligence by integrating different expert systems. The technical teams of those startups replied that this idea wasn't new in the industry, but that classifying data professionally in advance would be quite challenging, as different people might have different interpretations. The concept of general artificial intelligence itself is not particularly suitable and can mislead the public. In fact, the primary contribution of transformer technology was to create a more general generative AI algorithm. Therefore, the focus is on generative, rather than general. Currently, the shift in artificial intelligence hotspots towards the mixture of experts architecture supports my original view. The neural network technology of that time also had significant generality, so why not say that neural networks and deep learning algorithms are also forms of general artificial intelligence? Of course, it is meaningful to go through a broad and comprehensive process of general artificial intelligence to explore new patterns. Moreover, the formation of different expert models occurs naturally in this process, eliminating the need for prior professional data classification, which might not even be suitable. Humans are also divided into various fields of expertise, and to solve general problems, different experts must come together to do so. Artificial intelligence will certainly move towards this model. What are the benefits of the mixture of experts architecture? This ties in with the reinforcement learning I mentioned earlier. The already trained data needs to continuously evolve through new interactions with its environment. For example, let's take the term quantization, as it has different meanings in different professional fields. If there are no distinctions made, it will jump around between different professional fields, resulting in significant differences. If a new field adopts the term quantization, the resulting differences will be even greater. This can cause significant interference with the trained AI data. However, if we categorize into different professional fields, then they will not interfere with each other. The smaller the changes in the new environment, the less interference there will be for the model, making it easier to stabilize and reducing the computational load. The technical route of general AI suggests that all data may have correlations with other data, referred to as dense models, leading to a heavy computational burden. However, through the professional classification of mixed expert systems, referred to as sparse models, most correlation calculations can be conducted solely within the data of their respective expert models, significantly reducing the overall computational load. This principle is similar to how many conferences use breakout sessions to ensure that discussions remain focused and relevant. When multiple specialized models are combined, they appear to function like a general AI that understands everything. Initially, it is essential to clarify which expert model a new input belongs to, which involves a gating mechanism for determining which model to use. Anyone who has studied programming might immediately think of the switch statement, a common construct in almost all programming languages. It serves as a gating mechanism. The simplest form of a gating programming statement with only two choices is the if statement. Therefore, the core technical principles are similar, but their implementations vary. The switch statement provides a condition for judgment, and when different results are determined, it directs the processing to the appropriate subroutine based on those conditions. It's like a reception desk in a large company, where visitors explain their needs, and the receptionist directs them to the appropriate department for further assistance. The mixed expert architecture, MO, can be seen as an amplified version of the switch programming statement. 4. Multi-head latent attention, MLA. Let's clarify the concept of multi-head latent attention, MLA, to avoid confusion. Simply put, when many people use artificial intelligence software like DeepSeek or Doubao for queries, input queries must be translated into a computer language of keys and values. Remembering the basic principles we discussed earlier, it is clear that many queries will have a significant amount of repetition. If all queries are stored independently in memory, they will occupy a large amount of valuable memory. Therefore, if those repeated queries are consolidated and compressed, memory usage can be significantly reduced. MLA is essentially that simple. When performing actual queries, the decompression process will be the same as the original processing. This is similar to watching live broadcasts online, where the video is initially compressed before being transmitted over the internet, and it is decompressed upon reaching the user. If someone directly uploads the original video online, it will undoubtedly consume much more resources. This illustrates the inefficiencies in American AI technology. 5. Why is there such a significant improvement space in American information technology? The United States has led the entire process of information technology, which has made the information architecture established by the United States the standard for the whole world. Technicians in other countries often do not question why these standards were established. They just adopt them. Even when they find some seemingly unreasonable aspects, they tend to believe that there must be some reasons behind them, assuming that the Americans have thought it through. In fact, this is not the case at all. It can also be said that the technologies used by DeepSeek are not truly original. The United States has everything. There are so many technologies in information technology that there are numerous paths and solutions to achieve the same goals. Choosing different solutions and technical routes may reflect different cultures. 1. The cost balancing problem of various resources. The first issue is that the implementation of software involves balancing the costs of many aspects of resources. Cost of computing power, cost of storage capacity, cost of network bandwidth, labor costs for programming, others. In practical implementation, different plans need to be designed based on the cost differences of various resources. 1. If computing power is easily obtained and storage costs are high, then the algorithm will tend to be computing power dependent, which is more economical. 2. Conversely, if storage costs are very low and computing costs are high, then it can lean towards adopting minimal computing power and historical knowledge-dependent algorithms. 3. If the labor and management costs of programming are high, but obtaining computing and storage capacity is easy and relatively low cost, then the tendency will be to use the simplest programming algorithms without much regard for the cost and efficiency of computing and storage. This is a type of hardware-dependent algorithm. 4. If hardware costs are relatively high, then more complex programming must be used to save computing and storage hardware resources as much as possible. 5. If network bandwidth costs are high, there will be a pursuit of higher compression rates for the information that needs to be transmitted. Therefore, without a comprehensive balance of these costs, it cannot be simply stated which algorithm or strategy is better. However, as the United States has led the development of information technology, it has gradually developed a distinct culture. Due to Moore's law, which pertains to chips, computing and storage capabilities can be easily obtained and rapidly increased, while labor in the United States is relatively expensive. Thus, the United States has developed a culture that does not focus much on optimizing computing and storage efficiency, but rather emphasizes the convenience, simplicity, and readability of programming. Although this is not absolute, it is generally the case. In the early 1990s, during my graduate studies at Beijing University of Posts and Telecommunications, I had a profound experience. My project was to develop an algorithm software called floodfill, which is used to identify and calculate the area of irregular water bodies, such as lakes, in satellite imagery. The floodfill algorithm starts from a clearly visible point on the lake surface, and then the computer starts processing from this pixel, checking whether the adjacent pixels have the same color. If they match, it labels them. Otherwise, it abandons that direction. In this way, it eventually finds all adjacent, connected lake surface pixels. The most basic version of the floodfill algorithm is quite straightforward. It processes a pixel by checking its 4 neighboring pixels, up, down, left, right. If they are the same, it uses this new pixel as the basis for the same processing. This self-referential method is known as recursion. A limitation of this simplest recursive algorithm is that it does not retain information about previously checked pixels. Each recursive call checks all 4 neighboring pixels, which means that each pixel on the lake surface could be checked multiple times. This algorithm relies solely on computational power. At that time, I developed a directed floodfill algorithm that allows each pixel on the lake surface to be checked only once. Its principle is also based on a knowledge dependency approach, remembering the pixels that have already been checked. In practice, this is done by using 2 endpoints of a line segment that records the same color, allowing each lake surface pixel to be checked only once, achieving optimal computational efficiency. After implementing this software, I compared it with the most advanced similar software in the United States, and indeed, the efficiency improved dramatically, reaching the highest computational efficiency globally at that time. This experience profoundly impacted me. How could I have so easily developed a world-class solution? Moreover, the extent of the improvement was astonishing. Throughout this process, I conducted extensive research on software efficiency. For instance, by setting the most frequently used variables, like counter variables, as register variables in the CPU, since register access is the fastest, even if other components remain unchanged, the computational time required by the software would decrease significantly. After graduating, I worked as the chief engineer at Wangma Computer in Huizhou, where I intentionally focused on studying software system efficiency. For instance, this simple measure increased computational efficiency by an order of magnitude. These research experiences made me realize a principle. The United States, as the core of CPU chip production and computing power, has a product development philosophy that doesn't lack computing power, but software programming engineers are expensive. Therefore, the information technology culture tends to favor programming that is simple and easy to manage, without paying too much attention to computing efficiency. 2. Commercial factors. There is also a second commercial reason for the formation of this culture. Since CPUs are produced by companies like Intel, they continuously upgrade chip performance exponentially according to Moore's law. If computing-dependent algorithms are abandoned and computing efficiency is excessively improved, there will not be such a strong demand for new CPUs. In the entire landscape of hardware products in information technology, companies that control CPUs undoubtedly have fundamental control over the standards of the entire information technology architecture. Thus, among all hardware companies, those that control CPUs hold more influence than those that produce storage products. Companies in the peripheral sector have even less influence. The so-called Wintel alliance refers to the tacit understanding between these two companies, where Intel persuades Microsoft not to overly focus on software computing efficiency, leaving that issue for Intel to handle. Microsoft is also happy to devote more energy to the simplicity of programming and the user-friendliness of the interface. As a result, over time, this culture has created significant room for improvement in computing efficiency. This significant gap in computing efficiency has also persisted in the hardware and software systems developed by NVIDIA and OpenAI during the artificial intelligence era. In fact, all those technological improvements and methods to enhance computing efficiency are well known to Americans, and most of them were proposed by them first. However, due to this cultural formation and certain commercial factors, they often do not fully leverage these technologies, and under certain conditions, they may even deliberately reduce hardware usage efficiency, leading to absurdly low efficiency levels. This is why DeepSeek has such great potential to improve the computing efficiency of artificial intelligence. 6. The Chinese-style programming-dependent hardware resource minimization culture. 1. The culture of hardware resource minimization formed in Chinese history since its founding. The Communist Party of China developed under conditions of extreme scarcity of hardware resources. As a result, China has long cultivated a culture of programming dependence and hardware resource minimization. This culture is evident in many areas, such as on the battlefield during the Korean War, where the volunteer army maximized the efficiency of weapon and equipment use through various means, relying on human initiative. In contrast, the United States embodies a culture of simply investing more in hardware resources, often referred to as the Van Fleet ammunition culture. Hardware resource minimization corresponds to maximizing the utilization rate of hardware resources. In the field of information technology, China did not initially form a culture of minimal hardware resource utilization. This is because the United States initially controlled almost all hardware, leaving others primarily focused on application-level programming. The algorithms for accessing the lowest-level hardware resources were encapsulated through various function libraries and APIs. Application-level programmers typically know what the program does but often lack understanding of how it is stored, transmitted, and processed at the hardware level. This makes it challenging to enhance hardware efficiency. However, as China's industrial chain increasingly penetrates the underlying hardware, Chinese engineers have gradually come to understand the most fundamental technical details. To fully leverage the capabilities of hardware, it is necessary to adopt lower-level programming methods. Using assembly language generally allows for achieving greater hardware efficiency than high-level languages. Especially, Chinese companies have done more work integrating software and hardware systems, creating many conditions and opportunities for accumulating technology to fully utilize hardware capabilities. The primary programming language used by DeepSeek is PTX, Parallel Thread Execution, which is close to a lower-level assembly language. It can better schedule hardware resources directly in programs with high computational demands, thereby achieving higher hardware efficiency. In contrast, the widely used high-level programming language Python is mainly employed for model construction, training, and deployment, where hardware execution efficiency is not as high. Therefore, DeepSeek adopts the strategy used by the volunteer army in the Korean War, achieving superior hardware efficiency with far lower hardware requirements than its opponents, enabling it to outperform them significantly. 2. The major trend in the post-Moore's Law era currently, many common perceptions of artificial intelligence are misguided. For example, there is a belief that developing artificial intelligence necessarily requires significant power consumption. If this were true, the development of artificial intelligence would be unsustainable. In the past, during the effective era of Moore's Law, it was possible to continuously achieve exponential growth in computing power with the same power consumption. However, now that Moore's Law is increasingly failing, achieving exponential growth in computing power now demands nearly exponential increases in power consumption. If the computationally dependent programming culture from the past era of effective Moore's Law continues, even a country like China, which has very good power development, would struggle to maintain it. Therefore, the difficulties in enhancing computing power are not only challenges that China will face. The United States will encounter them as well. However, due to US sanctions on high-end chips, China has recognized that insufficient computing power will become a long-term reality. Therefore, this time the shock of DeepSeek is not merely a shock stemming from a specific product's technology, but a major clash of two cultures and ideologies in information technology. 7. China's strategic choices **** in August 2024. Some investors in DeepSeek, along with several professionals in the artificial intelligence field, invited me and a friend from Huawei who is responsible for strategy to have an informal dinner discussion about issues related to large AI models. Although it was an informal discussion, as an investor, I was still trying to see if there was a way to find a profitable business model for large models, especially DeepSeek's. At the beginning of the meeting, I was hesitant to speak because I have always been conservative about artificial intelligence. A friend from Huawei candidly expressed a negative attitude, believing it would be hard to find a successful business model. It was only after my Huawei friend had said a lot that I dared to express my basic agreement with his personal thoughts. However, the dinner discussion left everyone feeling gloomy, and eventually, I became hesitant to speak again. One investor even bluntly said, "Professor Wang, please stop saying that. If you continue to talk like this, it will be equivalent to completely denying this project." During the meeting, I also tried to propose various potential business models, such as mimicking scale AI's labeling outsourcing, and mentioned that since there was no commercial benefit, it might be better to go fully open source for social good. Today, the social benefits of DeepSeek have indeed materialized in all the ways we envisioned and discussed that day. This is also why Huanfeng Quantitative can achieve this, as it does not solely rely on making money from it. I can't say what role that informal discussion played in today's open-source DeepSeek, but I'm glad I had the chance to study this company in depth before it became public. Given the current situation in China, we have already made breakthroughs in hardware technologies for random storage, such as Hefei Changxin, and flash memory, such as Yangtze memory technologies. In chip technology, the integration of storage is inherently higher than that of computation, because random access memory chips require only one transistor to store one bit of information. In flash memory, one transistor can even store 2 bits, MLC flash chips, 3 bits, TLC flash chips, or 4 bits, QLC flash chips of information. In contrast, CPUs require at least 4 transistors to store a single bit of information. In the field of AI computing chips, China is currently slightly behind. Therefore, in the overall cost balance of hardware, China should adopt a strategy of minimizing computing power and relying on storage. Previous computing systems, especially those formed during the PC era, were established on the premise of scarcity of memory. For example, the originally designed virtual memory technology was created to address the issue of limited memory. This situation has persisted even as memory costs have significantly decreased and the possibility of massive memory has emerged. I introduced the concept of massive memory computers back in 1998, and related articles were published in 3 issues of the Computer World newspaper at that time. It was only 10 years later that SAP introduced the concept of in-memory computing. But this concept is misleading because all computing requires memory. Only massive memory is truly essential. Therefore, establishing an information technology architecture based on the premise of scarcity of computing and massive memory is the inevitable future direction. In terms of overall cost balance, China should adopt a programming-dependent strategy that minimizes hardware resource usage. The SDN, software-defined networking, that I was among the first to propose in the industry, and the EMR architecture I developed while working at Digital Video are both solutions that require minimal hardware resources. When I participated in the IBC exhibition in Amsterdam, the leaders of the Chinese broadcasting system excitedly inquired after viewing the EMR, "Great, how much gap is left when compared to foreign countries?" I replied, "There is still a gap when compared to foreign companies. I apologize, but the founder of this architecture is right here." Upon hearing this, they exclaimed, "Ah? Oh, great." This architecture became the leading hardware platform for global broadcasting systems at that time, and many companies, including Cisco from the United States and Blankum from Germany, as well as Chinese companies, adopted this platform architecture, becoming the de facto global standard. These technical strategies were initially adopted only in specific fields, but moving forward, they must evolve into a universal culture and development strategy aimed at comprehensively surpassing the United States, which is also China's advantage. If we merely catch up with EUV lithography machines and AI computing power chips comparable to NVIDIA, we will at most be on par with our opponents. Only by embracing entirely different paths and distinct information technology cultures can we achieve a comprehensive leap. Guided by this strategic approach, we mobilized engineers, relevant enterprises, government personnel, and investors nationwide, creating a vast ocean that ensnares the enemy in dire straits, offering solutions to address the temporary shortages of computing power chips, EUV lithography machines, and more, overcoming all challenges and establishing a foundation for leading the future of human information technology architecture and standards.